um, darn you.
Hello and welcome to Media Musings. I'm Noodle, that's Ring. It's Ring's channel, but Ring's got the giggles right now because of something I put in the comments.
Yeah.
Have you recovered yourself to take over now?
And, of course, hello and welcome to anyone who is lurking in the chat and or more likely watching in the future. And, of course, special thanks to my patrons, Santi the Same, GeoSam, and Julie LaVoice. So this week, we're talking about a modern Western. Not only a modern Western, a modern Danish Western.
Is that a sentence you ever thought you'd say out loud?
Yeah, I don't think I'd ever thought I'd say modern Danish Western. Like those words.
Yeah.
Ironic.
It's the SpongeBob meme. It's like those words. Can you use them in a sentence like that?
But it worked.
It did. Largely, I am going to fangirl completely over the acting.
Yeah.
But I think it worked because it didn't try to be an American Western.
Yeah.
Like, it really... What was nice is it was Danish actors playing Danish characters, so there's none of this weird-ass pretending to have an accent thing going on.
Yeah.
With a fundamentally Danish backstory.
Yeah.
Which is where the story opens.
Well,
kind of.
Though the thing is, while it's, while their backstory is fundamentally Danish, it's like if you remove the specific details, it's also fundamentally the backstory of most Western protagonists.
Yeah, they are soldiers who fought in a war.
And then moved west.
Yeah. There is one bombshell I want to drop. I wouldn't call this film a Western.
And it was your pick for Western Month.
I know, but I wouldn't. It has all the trappings of a Western.
Yeah.
I don't call this film a Western. This film is an immigrant story.
Okay, though, here's the thing. See, so we have the classic era, which we covered with, True Grit. And then we have the spaghetti era, which we, covered with Fistful of Dollars, which ironically came before True Grit.
Yeah.
And then we have the modern era. And the thing about the modern era is, basically the whole idea of the modern era, the Western, is taking the genre and then trying to make it more more historically authentic, not necessarily historically accurate. So part of the Western move or the modern movement in the Western genre, aside from, fun popcorn films like Cowboys versus Aliens, which I still unironically love.
Yeah, I still unironically love that movie. We have to do that next time we do Westerns.
Yeah. Is, focusing more on, the Western experience from lenses that aren't the, typical Anglo, white man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Catholic.
So,
not Catholic.
white Anglo Protestant.
Sorry, I don't know if anyone who's watching this, I don't know if you're aware, I had a stream on my channel last night that went till 3:00 in the morning. And as most things do with streams, we were talking afterwards and we didn't stop talking until I think 5 o'clock. No, it was later than that. About 6:30, I think it was. Because the sun had come up here, so whenever sunrise was here. And that stream went on so long, I managed to get drunk and sober up while I was live. So if I'm a bit out of it today, I apologize.
And before we get back on topic, I'm just gonna congratulate you, because odds are, the way things are going, you'll have surpassed my most viewed video
in under 24 hours.
Yeah, like odds are, by the time we're done, you're probably gonna have like my most viewed video by like at least 10 views.
Wow, that's so
well, because you know, when we started, you were tied with the Story Keeper stream.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, I I don't normally look at numbers, but that to me just blows my mind. Like,
yeah.
So yeah. But if you want to check out that stream, you can do. I'm just going to drop that chill in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the Broship Roundtable on my channel. You can go find it. I'm not going to drop a link because
yeah.
But anyway, back on this.
Yeah. So while you say, while you don't peg it as a Western, I say it falls very well into the canon of the modern movement of the Western genre.
Oh yeah, the modern Western, but it's not a traditional Western. It's, when I say it's an immigrant story, the traditional Western, the cowboy riding on a horse.
Yeah.
That's how we're introduced to the protagonist. In this, he's already there and he's at a station. He's not a loner.
Yeah.
He's bringing his family in. And he almost becomes the quintessential cowboy as the film goes on.
Yeah.
Even then, he still retains an element of not having that. There's a lot of elements to this character that we'll go through. A few things that surprised me rewatching it that I realized. This guy is fundamentally not the quintessential cowboy.
Yeah.
This character of John.
Also,
for me, it's all about the westward expansion.
Yeah.
And it's a snapshot of that time right in between when life was good out in the West because you could farm, and it's a snapshot of the line between Jeffersonian ideals and the oil boom. It's literally smack in that moment.
Also, it's not the it's not the opening shot. It's actually probably like the 5th shot into the movie. But there's a shot like after it, focuses on, John waiting for the train, where it cuts and, he's and it cuts to show, John's point of view, and he's looking across, like he's standing at the train station, which is all built up and urban. Well, urban.
Well, it's made of wood.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
and then there's the train track, and then it's like past the train track is just wide open prairie.
Yeah.
And that is like quintessential Western in one shot.
Yeah. It's the open prairie, the sort of canyon in the distance, scrubland with a massive ass train track coming straight through it.
Yeah.
It's almost shot for shot. It does almost look a little bit like the painting Westward Expansion.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure I've mentioned on this channel before.
Are you talking about like the Manifest Destiny painting?
Yeah, the Manifest Destiny painting.
Yeah.
John Gast.
Yeah.
American Progress. It's almost, and it's not shy about drawing on the imagery from paintings like that.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's weird because you're expecting a cowboy movie there to be sort of racial politics going on and other stuff, and there's a little bit of it, but it's really not the core plot. in the way it is in a lot of cowboy movies.
Yeah.
And then we get the screen rolling up where for a moment you wonder if you're watching Star Wars.
No, actually, I wasn't reminded of Star Wars.
What were you reminded of?
I was reminded of like old like night like 50s where they give you where they like Star Wars is the more the like Star Wars wasn't a essentially an homage to this where like films like Ben-Hur or start with I think Lawrence of Arabia might have also started like that, but I haven't seen Lawrence of Arabia, so don't quote me on that.
Yeah, it's like the classic epics, they all start with like this paragraph of text.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this paragraph of text is immediately sets the film on a specific time.
Yeah.
And sets the characters in a specific way. We're talking about the Danish War, two brothers who've, when the war was lost, moved out to the West.
Yeah.
7 years go by. And finally, one of the brothers sends for his wife and kid. He's ready to send for his wife and kid, which means he's built something he thinks is good enough for them.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, the one thing Mads Mikkelsen is quite famous for is his micro expressions and the way he can just sort of, you could put a camera on him and he doesn't appear to move, but his entire facial expression feels like it's changing. Or like a slight twitch of his eye can just tell you everything about what the character's thinking. And it was really weird for me because I've seen pictures of that guy with his wife.
Yeah.
And he really brought that pure, unadulterated adoration with the way this character looked at his wife.
Yeah.
There is no doubt in anyone's mind that he has missed her and he adores her. And even the long lingering shot where she says, this is your son. And he looks at him and it's like, almost as if he's going to offer him a handshake, like this is a stranger. And then he just looks at his wife and you get that long lingering shot that just stays on his face as if he's drinking her in, as like he can't get enough of the sight of her.
Yeah.
Which makes what happens next all the more horrendous.
Yeah. So it's kind of become. It seems like it's kind of becoming a trope with movies where you don't fuck with a man named John.
Yeah. Yeah, you just don't fuck with a man named John. Yeah. That's good. That's good life advice.
Yeah.
But that I want to talk about in more depth a bit later on.
Yeah.
So we're 1871. So we are. Where are we in American history?
Civil War. We're 5 years after the Civil War.
So we're post-Civil War. We're smack in the middle of Reconstruction then.
Yeah.
Although Reconstruction has clearly not got to this part of the country.
Yeah. I'm thinking we're probably like somewhere. Now, landscape-wise, it looks like it was shot like in eastern Montana or South Dakota.
Yeah, but then there's that final shot at the end that I think that's the famous Wild West shot.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Plot-wise, I'd say the settings. Yeah, I'd say the settings like western Oklahoma, eastern Texas.
Yeah. I mean, for me, that final shot, it might even be the Grand Canyon that you're looking at in that final shot of the film.
No.
No. Well, I've never seen the Grand Canyon in person, so I'm guessing. But you're looking at, let's have a look. Because I know I recognize that particular view. And And the only place I can find it, if you literally Google Wild West, it comes straight up as the Wild West Challenge, which I think is some kind of car race.
Yeah.
From what I gathered from 3 minutes of frantic Googling. But it is it's scrubland and just it's not fertile land. You know, it's a hard life, and that's basically what the whole point is. Yeah, that's what was saying, Mama. That so if it's after the Civil War, then it's Reconstruction.
Yeah, it's.
That's what we're saying.
We're placing, the now, like, and unlike, classic or spaghetti westerns, I think actually most modern westerns also do this, where it's rooted in a specific time and a specific place.
I will say though, it is there's very little to no commentary on race in this, and there's sure as hell no commentary on African Americans in this, because they're just not there.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a Danish film. Finding black actors in Denmark is going to be a bit of a struggle.
Yeah.
So I can see why. Plus, I can see why they avoided it. Like, it's a Danish film. It's not. But it sets them up straight away as this guy's a family man. He's there with his brother. He's waiting for his wife and kid. And then he puts them in a stagecoach. The classic image of the American West, the stagecoach.
Yeah.
And initially they're sat opposite a reasonably well-to-do looking couple.
Yeah, either Hispanics that were already there or immigrants, because I like, it was either French or Spanish. I wasn't sure what language they were speaking.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on the language. I was it's not English.
Yeah, it was a Latin language.
Yeah, it was definitely a Latin language.
Yeah, I think it might have been Spanish, but it wasn't like the Trilly Spanish.
It wasn't Spain Spanish. It was.
Yeah. So probably a a well-to-do, wider like, probably they're like, if we were gonna, like, they're probably Hispanic whose ancestors came over from Spain before the area was under U.S. control.
Yeah. So, and it's very polite, and they're just sort of looking at each other as you do. And then we have these, I'm going to call them yobs, appearing at the door. And at first he seems really polite, and you'd think he actually worked for the stagecoach company. Sorry, there's been a mistake. Can you move?
Yeah.
And this was interesting for me, because when they're speaking English, even when they're speaking English, there's a language barrier between John's family and this guy and those people and this guy, because he talks in insinuations and unspoken threats, and it creates a language difference between them on top of the language barrier of these people are speaking to him in their second language. He's making it even harder for them to argue with him purely by the way he plays with the language.
Yeah.
And he's just, there's a very self-important, snide, elitist way that he does it.
Yeah.
And it's a microaggression. It is. It's a microaggression. But what I found really interesting, like last week I was saying, the foreigners were very not well portrayed as particularly decent people.
Yeah.
In this, it's the local.
Yeah.
The local guy who is the vicious, violent, horrendous human being, as we go on to say.
Okay, I will take a slight contention with you calling him a local.
Delarue, yeah, it's not exactly an American name, is it?
Well, no. My point is, yeah, they're American. I'm thinking Delarue is actually probably Cajun. Yeah,
I would say so, given the New Orleans comment later on.
Yeah, Delarue's definitely from Louisiana. But my point is, while they were, while they're local in the sense that they're American, they're not exactly local to the area. They're an outside force that was brought in.
Yeah. So, for me, this sets this film up as a bit of a battle for the land.
Yeah.
So in a kind of very broad way, it follows the structure of the nobody at me for what I'm about to say, you know what words are about to come out of my mouth, the whole cowboys and Indians trope.
Yeah.
In that it's two opposing forces fighting for a piece of land. And who deserves it, who doesn't, who gets it, who doesn't. There's a lot of it going on.
No, see, I placed it in a different trope, in a different Western trope. Homesteaders versus the railroad.
There's definitely that going on. That going on. But I mean, on a sort of comparatively, yes, it's homesteaders versus the railroad, because literally Delarue is working for the railroad.
Yeah.
But there's this. It's the people who are on the land, who've already claimed it, who've worked it for 7 years and hunted and know the area.
Yeah.
And he's kind of fighting for his right to just have his family there, and that's it. That's all he cares about.
Yeah.
And it's only as the film progresses and he starts to realize what's going on that he's. For me, this character's got a bit of a, and I say this with very little knowledge of what the character was actually like, and I've heard this through hearsay. And I'm sure Pale Blue Mama will correct me if I'm wrong, because it's a Star Wars thing. I hear Anakin Skywalker in the animated series, his main priority throughout the entire series was protecting his family. And, being there, doing something for his family. His family were always his priority. Very much the same with this character. His primary motivation never changes.
Yeah.
His family are his primary motivation. But that's twisted very quickly to go from protecting his family to revenge for his family, justice for his family. There's a lot of weird biblical themes in this film as well.
Yeah.
Which, yeah.
Given the name of the film, the Salvation.
Yeah.
Okay. So, speaking on biblical themes, I know we're kind of going chronologically, but this seems the best lead in to this scene, because
crucifixion.
No. I'll call this scene the jail cell confession.
That's a really There's a whole discussion to be had about the biblical themes in the jail cell conversation.
Yeah.
Because he's talking about he has to sacrifice one lamb for the flock. Now that ain't biblical.
Yeah.
That is not a biblical.
That's the opposite.
Is counter biblical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wrote down, where did I put it? Reality of the West is sacrifice is what I wrote.
Yeah, and well, and the reason I call it a confession is because the way it's shot, it looks like a confessional scene. Except the roles are reversed, where the sheriff, who is also the priest, is, essentially confessing to John.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that as well. It's very it's an interesting way of filming it, especially with the brother sat there listening as well.
Yeah.
But the sheriff and the preacher, everyone seems to have two jobs in this movie. Which fair for a tiny little town in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But the jobs are really contradictory.
Yeah.
How can you be the sheriff, the lawman, and be the preacher?
Yeah.
A man of peace and a man of God. Like there's a fundamental disconnect there. How can you be the mayor of the people, the judiciary, as it were, and be the undertaker?
Yeah.
Like, how is that not a conflict of interest if you get a murderer in front of you?
Yeah.
Like the whole thing about this movie to me is that everyone has a conflict of interest, except possibly John.
Yeah.
Well,
and the general store is also the saloon.
Which is just, again, weird.
Yeah.
The old woman sold ammunition.
Yeah.
It's just, the whole film is, it's like they've looked at every single Western trope and gone, how can we undercut this?
Yeah.
In the characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the stagecoach. And the language I was talking about, the way this guy sort of plays with language to screw around with people.
Yeah.
Is very different to the way John speaks when we finally hear him speak English.
Yeah.
There's the comment he makes to his wife before they get on the stagecoach when she says, "Oh, is your brother not coming?" He likes to stay in town once in a while, so he knows how to say things gently and demurely to his wife.
Yeah.
He knows, she knows, he knows, and he knows she knows. Yeah. But basically, his brother's got a bird in town. That's how that reads to me.
Yeah.
Either a bird or a hooker or something.
Or he likes his drink a bit.
He's sober. If you look at him, when he comes back the following day, he's dead straight sober.
Yeah.
He's not hungover. And there's not a drinker. Neither of them are.
Well,
which
also
they have more than enough reason to be.
To be fair, I missed all of the Danish because the version I watched didn't have subtitles.
Ah, right, okay. So, to be fair, I had to turn subtitles on when I realized I tried to follow it, and I caught bits of it, but the subtitles helped. So when he first meets her, it's just an introduction to his son. Yeah. She asks why the brother's not coming, and he says he's staying in town. They get on the stagecoach. Then there's the conversation where she says to him, he speaks to when he speaks to the sort of well-to-do couple.
Yeah.
When she says hello, and he calls her mom and that bit. The wife turns to him and says in Danish, "You even talk like these people now."
Ah.
So she's almost calling out the fact that he has adapted.
Yeah.
And he's not the same man he was when he left her to go out there.
Yeah.
You dress like them, you talk like them now. And then when he's talking to his son, he says to his son asks, am I old enough to go? How old is old enough to go hunting out here? Basically, how old is old enough to hunt? And when he looks his son up and down, the answer he gives is, "I think he'll be old enough tomorrow."
Awesome.
Yeah, and then heartbreaking in 10 seconds time.
Yeah.
But he's basically saying, I'll take you out hunting.
Yeah.
And the son's really keen. Then when they're talking, he basically just translates for the wife when the asshole starts talking to her.
Yeah.
She doesn't say anything. And then when the guy grabs her, he starts talking to her in Danish again. Did you pick up on what he was saying to her there?
No. Well, I didn't understand it. Because no subtitles.
Yeah. When he grabs hold of her, after he's told the guy twice, take your hands off her. I'm telling you, take your hands off her. Yeah. And the guy grabs hold of her, pulls her onto his lap, and starts doing whatever he's doing with his hands. And they've got the gun on him. He says to his wife, "Marie, bite his ear. Marie, bite him on the ear." That's what he says to her to do. And so she does. And that's how he kind of for a second gets the drop on them.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they grab his son and push him out of the stagecoach.
Yeah. So I'm not though. Okay, so we are talking about in the stagecoach, and I'm going to bring up a very poignant or a very telling words.
Point.
Simile between the two named female characters in this movie. The two main. So we have Marie who doesn't speak because she doesn't speak the language, and then we have Princess.
Yeah. Who doesn't speak because she's had her tongue cut out.
Yeah.
And who it's never said explicitly, but from there's one shot where it zooms in on her face when she's on the train, and you see the marks on the side of her face, and you realize, shit, she's native.
Yeah.
Because until then she looks white. She does.
Yeah.
That she's obviously scarred, but it's the Wild West. People get scars all the time.
Yeah.
And it's only, even when she's in other situations, as she writes, she doesn't speak, but it's almost as if she thinks she's above speaking.
Yeah.
And she's got that air about her, and it's not until later you realise that she physically can't.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting... I don't think any women speak in this movie.
Yeah.
And yet...
well, the old woman does speak a little bit.
Yeah, no, the old woman speaks. Yeah, so don't get me... Yeah, correct me. Yeah. She does speak. And when she does speak, though, there's a masculinity in the thing she's saying. And there's a very... She doesn't waste the words. No one in this film does, to be honest. There's very little actual dialogue.
Yeah.
But we'll get to the old woman because there's an entire discussion to have there.
Yeah.
So they push him out the stagecoach. Off he goes. And we have the first of the truly cinematic montages in this movie.
Yeah.
I call it a montage, but it's one continuous scene of him just running through the night, chasing the stagecoach. And as tired as he gets, and you see him stumble, but he never stops.
Yeah.
And jeez, I got tired just watching him do that.
Yeah.
I was like, you're gonna pass out and die you're gonna, die of dehydration or something.
Yeah.
And we have and it's very, it's highly reminiscent of the scenes in most sort of superhero movies where, you know, they're in the dark, they're stood on top of a building, it's raining, and they're having a moment.
Yeah.
He's having a moment, and he continues to have a moment repeatedly.
Yeah.
And there's this plucky, really lonely string music.
Yeah.
And it just draws you into the character. He's very... I'm not a music expert or anything, but it's very... you can almost imagine sort of an old man sat back on a porch plucking a banjo while he's telling this sad story kind of thing.
Yeah, though it's...
Although it's not a banjo.
Yeah, it's a guitar.
It's a guitar. But it's kind of that mental image you get. It's very sort of... It's very Robert Johnson.
Yeah.
It's that kind of guitar. It's really plucky and I don't mean like when Robert Johnson really got into it. I mean, he's not Robert Johnson's choruses, but more his verses, where he's very pluck, 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 you know.
Yeah.
And it's just haunting.
Yeah, it's more singular notes, less chords.
Yeah. And we do... then we get to the first killing scene, if you like.
Yeah.
And we're immediately made aware that this guy is not fucking around.
Yeah.
Like, he approaches, he's not scared to pick up a weapon off a body or off a drunk man. The shots he takes, a headshot in the dark at that distance with a weapon of that era.
Yeah.
Dude got some skills. When they said he was a soldier, I don't think they meant he was the kind of soldier that Americans think of when they think of Civil War soldiers.
Yeah.
He was... I wrote down at one point a sharpshooter versus gunslinger.
Yeah.
And he never wastes a shot in this film.
Yeah.
Like, not... as in, he never misses a shot.
Yeah.
He wastes plenty of shots. Because not only does he put a bullet in the guy, as the guy's pleading and begging for his life, he empties the damn gun into him.
Yeah.
And there's no emotion on his face. It's just total 1,000-yard stare going on.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even know if his wife and kid are alive or dead at this point. He's just...
no. He knows his kid is dead because...
Not yet.
No.
He shoots the first guy at the stagecoach, and then when he walks on, he finds his son and picks him up.
Yeah. Yeah, but the guy pleading is after he picked up his son. The first time.
No, the first guy where he chases him into the trees is not. He chases him into the trees, and the guy's on his back, trying to get away.
Yeah.
And he puts a bullet in.
That's after he found the son, because he found the son like a little bit before he saw the stagecoach.
Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he finds the son, kills him, then he goes back for the son. And there's this real contradiction. He goes from cold-blooded killer to grieving father in a split second.
Yeah.
And I thought that I saw something that was really poignant there was he's first and foremost a father.
Yeah.
Like, he picks this kid up and carries him like he'd carry a living child on his hip, you know, here with the kid's head on his shoulder. That's not the easiest way to carry a child, especially a body. Yeah. That's not the easiest way to carry a dead body. The easiest way is over your shoulder. Famously. Yeah. But he carries the kid as if he's still alive.
Oh, and that's like the same when he's riding back to his place, because he's got
he's on the saddle in front of him, not slung over the back.
And his wife is slung over the other horse.
Mm. And there's this weird sort of... You can tell that he's still not quite come to grips with the fact that they're dead. Like,
Yeah.
he's killed a good, like, 3 or 4 people for them because they've been killed. But he still hasn't, like, fully emotionally grasped that they're dead.
Yeah,
There's still
because
a part of him that's...
Yeah, because he puts them in the bed.
Yeah, and lays them out.
Yeah.
And then his brother shows up. And what's immediately apparent with the brother shows up in the daytime. Brother immediately knows something's wrong.
Yeah.
Because you would expect, if you just brought a woman and child to a place like that, there should be smoke coming out the fire. There isn't.
Yeah.
There should be movement. There should be, you know, all kinds of things that are just not there. So the brother knows and walks in gun ready. Like, these two guys are quite clearly used to living on the edge of society and are quite used to living expecting that anyone's going to try and kill them at any given point.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of feeds into the whole war soldiers things.
Yeah.
But then we have the first real moment where this film really deviates from a Western.
Yeah.
When have you ever seen the main protagonist of a Western cry? Like, full on sobbing, crying. Like, face red, tears coming down the whole shebang. When have you ever seen that? And I think if you hadn't already gathered it by this point, that's the point in this film where you look at it and you're like, this is something different. This is not your run-of-the-mill cowboy movie.
Yeah.
And it just struck me as odd to see someone in a film like that crying like that. I can't think of any other film where I've seen that. Cowboy film.
Yeah.
Like Western. No, I can't.
Yeah, I can't either, though I haven't seen very many modern Westerns.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that many classic or spaghetti either, but...
Yeah. But even still, it jars with our understanding of what that archetype is.
Yeah.
These guys don't cry. These guys, if someone who they love is killed, they go stone-faced, pick up a gun and go on a rampage.
Yeah.
Which he did. But then we also see him cry. And it's like, there's a 3-dimensional cowboy story. And this is... And then we have the conversation between the two brothers. And the brother is very wary. It's almost like he knows what John's capable of here.
Yeah.
And he says, who was it? And John says, it was strangers. Now, that to me is a very telling statement. That he doesn't recognize the enforcers for Delarue.
Well, so here's the thing. So Delarue's brother had just gotten out of prison.
Yeah.
So...
See, what I took from that is Delarue's brother had killed someone.
Yeah.
Because 7 years is a life sentence. But that might be like a British thing. For me, I took that Delarue's brother had done time for at least 7 years.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't think like we said last week, Clint Eastwood has two expressions, hat on and hat off. Yeah. The idea of, can you imagine Clint Eastwood or John Wayne in a film crying? Yeah. John Wayne at least is capable of smiling occasionally. I think Clint Eastwood's face might crack in half if he tried. In a Western. You know, but, he's not.
Which is also an interesting symmetry when Delarue comes into town and the townsfolk are like, yeah, we don't know who did it.
Yeah. Although it's quite obvious who did it because there's a comment passed later in the film where the kid says, so the only two guys who can shoot in this town are leaving.
Yeah.
So they knew who did it. They knew. So but you kind of get the impression the townspeople know that these two guys aren't here to cause trouble. They've been here 7 years. That they're reasonable citizens. They wouldn't cause trouble without a reason.
Well, arguably that, like, that comment isn't, because it's also so we know that John and his brother are basically make their living hunting pelts. Yeah, hunting pelts. Yeah. So that that could be why that comment's there, is because they're the only ones who actually go out and use guns.
Exactly. But that's the whole thing. But I need to tip my hat and hold my hands up and say Jeffrey Dean Morgan is the surprising, wonderful, brilliant character for this film.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, he makes a good villain.
Yeah.
Like, he is such... I've only ever seen Jeffrey Dean Morgan in 2 films. In 2 things, even. I've seen him as John Winchester in Supernatural.
Yeah.
And I've seen him in P.S. I Love You, where he basically plays a guy who's on screen for all of about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I know he was in the one with the zombies, where he had the bat and all that.
Yeah, Walking Dead.
But he makes a surprisingly good villain. Like, I knew, because there were hints of it in episodes of Supernatural when he's, like, possessed and shit. But he is he's got the Kubrick stare as well. And that's how we're introduced to him. Did you notice? His hat's down and then he looks up. But the way he looks up, it's the Private Pile look.
Yeah.
This guy is, like, immediately you want to run from this guy.
Yeah.
And he's there with the freaking giant ass cigar in his hand. And he's just...
Okay, and this is what I picked up based on context clues. So here's what we know. Delarue and his boys were brought in to deal with the local native, the local natives.
Yeah.
We know Delarue is probably from Louisiana, given his name.
Yeah, and 2, given his comment about New Orleans.
Yeah. And
well, maybe he's from Louisiana, maybe he's from, like, the border there, but he's from that kind of area.
Yeah, and he also we also know that him and his boys are essentially tasked with, getting everyone to sell their land for the oil.
Yeah.
I think Delarue was probably a Confederate.
Yeah, that's quite that is strongly hinted at.
Yeah.
But he's just a nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
And that is established very quickly, not just visually, but first he sees. At first, almost you feel sorry for him when you first see him, because he's got this aura about him. But then he's identifying his brother's body, and there's a close-up shot of him squeezing his brother's hand.
Yeah.
And there's 2 things you notice about that shot. First of all, it's an unexpected display of emotion from that character, the way he looks.
Yeah.
And second of all, the working man's tan. Like, his hand, if you look at his hand compared to his brother's hand now, even with the sort of white pallor of death on a body.
Yeah.
His hands are like 5 or 6 shades darker than his brother's.
Yeah.
He works for a living. He's out in the sun day in, day out.
Yeah.
And it's rough. His hands are rough looking.
And we also notice how everyone in the town is terrified of him.
Yeah, they are shit scared of him. But then the comment he passes, he loves his brother. We see that from the hand squeeze. But then the comment he passes, he looks up at the mayor and he says, make sure he doesn't smell of booze when Princess sees him.
Yeah.
He knows his brothers are drunk.
Yeah.
He knows his brother probably just pissed off the wrong dude by trying on for his wife. He knows exactly what happened.
Yeah.
For him, the revenge, I don't think... If he were an honest, honourable man, he'd say, look, yeah, my brother's been killed, but I know what my brother was like, and that was probably a fair cop.
Yeah.
But it's all about the reputation.
Yeah.
And his reputation cannot stand the slight.
Yeah.
And so he declares this blood feud, essentially. He gives the town mayor a completely impossible demand of find the killer within 2 hours.
Yeah.
This is the Wild West. They don't have cell phones and cars and motorbikes.
Yeah.
It takes 2 hours to go from one place to the next, for Christ's sake. You know, it's...
And technically, like,
and
it is kind of up in the air, but, for all they know, it could have been just like a random, bandit who just, hit up the stagecoach and is out in the wild somewhere.
Yeah, for all they know. Yeah. And he says this, and then he lays down this emotional blackmail, which immediately sets him up as the villain. He's like, I don't care. If you want to go hunt the guy who killed your brother, fair cop. But this whole thing of find the guy, I want him alive, or I want to, or choose to.
Yeah,
and then when the mayor tries to refuse and the sheriff tries to refuse, you choose 2 or I'll take 4.
Well, also
deal with the devil is that.
And also, once again, more religious themes. He tells the sheriff, who is also the priest,
an eye for
how it's written, an eye for an eye.
Yeah. And of course they don't find him in that time. But I want to talk about the old woman they offer up.
Yeah.
She's very staunch.
Yeah.
She's an example of what we call cinematically a good death, an honourable death, a valid, a good sacrifice. Like, she's the perfect sacrificial victim.
And I don't think, we don't, the film itself doesn't say one way or the other, but I get the sense that she, because she knows she's near the end of her life anyways, I think she volunteered.
Yeah, we get that impression that she volunteered.
Yeah.
Or at least she was asked and didn't refuse.
Yeah.
And all she cares about is look after my grandson.
Yeah.
That's all she cares about. And that's, fair call.
Yeah, look after my grandson in the store.
Yeah. And then there's the other character who is offered up as the sacrificial lamb, who is the exact opposite, who is a young man, but is missing a leg.
Yeah.
And he comes across, fair cop, dude, you're being offered up on a sacrificial altar, you've got a right to argue. But he comes across as, especially in comparison to her, as weak, as cowardly. Because, he's crying and he's screaming, I don't want to die, my life's not all that bad.
Yeah.
He's begging and pleading for his life, and he's not doing it with any kind of self-respect. He's clearly like, there's clearly a contrast being set up there of age and youth, and women can be strong in a different way. And the sacrificial woman, and There's a lot going on there in the sort of discussion of gender roles and things.
Well, and we also get the sense, like there's also possibly the sense of, he's someone the town can spare.
Yeah, like he clearly ain't working. He clearly ain't doing backbreaking work if he's missing a leg.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. And we do get the impression that these two people have been chosen because they're kind of in the way only really wild situations can be. They're kind of dispensable.
Yeah.
They are. You see films sometimes that are based during sort of atrocities where you have groups together and they have to leave the old and the infirm behind to save the rest.
Yeah.
And usually there's some, miraculous answer as to why they don't do that because they're good people and it somehow works. But we know that in a real life situation, if you are in a survival situation, as valuable as their lives are inherently, they're going to slow you down.
Yeah.
Like, and she's accepted that. She's accepted that she's the sacrificial lamb and she's been offered because she's already lived her life and she's done her bit. And there's, what else has she really got left? Her grandson's nearly 16. He's nearly as much an adult as you become in the West.
Yeah.
So what else has she really got except for the store, which her grandson can run?
Yeah.
And it's a very cold, calculation of the value of life.
Yeah.
And this sheriff is uncomfortably good at those kind of calculations.
Yeah.
Especially for a priest. But it does show there's the brutality of the killings as well.
Yeah.
And this is where we see the brutality of Jeffrey Dean Morgan's character of kills the man with one leg. I'm going to say, because I'm not going to repeat the word that was used in the film.
Yeah.
Kills the old woman and then says, "Oh, do you really think that that's worth my brother's life?" And then basically
shoots someone else.
Yeah. And then we have this moment where we realize how toothless the system is in this town.
Yeah.
The sheriff basically doesn't say a word. He's just committed murder and the sheriff doesn't say a damn word.
Yeah.
And he turns to the mayor and basically declares a protection racket. And not only establishes that there's already a protection racket in place, but ups the cost.
Yeah.
And the mayor don't argue with him. The mayor basically yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full, sir. Shine your shoes for you, sir. There's no backbone to the guy at all. And yet he's supposed to speak for these people and he's supposed to be their representative.
Yeah, but we also learn that he's not exactly cowed in that he's working with Delarue.
Yeah, but this is we learn that later on, and that character is such a snake. He's so, for me, he's the real villain of this piece because he's the guy who had the choice to do the right thing or the profitable thing, and he chose the profitable thing repeatedly.
Yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, anyone who can hang around corpses all day and build coffins for a living is someone I'm going to side-eye. But it's an honest living and someone's got to do it.
Yeah.
But the snide way he behaves is very... There's one thing in particular that he does that is very telling of the character.
Yeah.
And it follows through. It takes a while through the film for it to happen. Where he gives John some money and says, you should put that somewhere safe, maybe in your boots, knowing full well Delarue is coming after John.
Yeah.
And knowing full well John's going to hang for it.
Yeah.
And then when John's up on the post, says he wants his boots, knowing the money's in there.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is just... end-stage capitalism, folks.
Yeah, and then, of course, later in the movie, I kept your boots clean.
Yeah. He's trying to wiggle out of it.
Yeah.
But there's one thing this film does really well, that is it differentiates between what is the law and what order is.
Yeah.
Because Delarue keeps order. But he's sure as hell ain't the law.
Yeah.
And then there's, again, this is what I mean by this film's a contradiction. We're then introduced to Princess.
Yeah.
First thing we know is Delarue and Princess are fucking, even though it's his brother's wife.
Yeah.
And his brother ain't even called yet. Like, let's be honest, his brother's been dead, what? Not even a day at this point?
Well, also we get the we get the sense that it's kind of like Delarue is all like Princess is kind of has the air of being in charge, but like
he lets her.
Yeah.
The thing with Delarue for me is he's Old Testament.
Yeah.
Takes on his brother's wife. He's Old Testament revenge. He's Old Testament judgment. His entire thing is he's Old Testament rage. That guy.
Yeah.
And there's a nastiness to him, and for everything that he does to this character he calls Princess, and he hands her over to his men at one point to have their way with her.
Yeah. After she tries to escape.
After she tries to do a runner. I think the nastiest thing he does is call her Princess. Because Princess is quite clearly not a name.
Yeah.
It's not her name. And especially when you find out she's native later, you start to sort of backfill the story.
Yeah.
And you start to wonder if maybe she's the daughter of some tribal chief.
And
she's been kidnapped, and she's kind of, and you start to fill in that backstory for her.
And you start to get the sense that maybe it wasn't the Native Americans that took her tongue.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Delarue's brother.
Yeah, to keep her quiet. And you start to get the sense that she's their prisoner.
Yeah.
She's a I don't want to say she's a Bridget character, but she kind of is. She's the woman passed around the men as the spoils of war. But she's very... Again, there's a thing about the women in this film. They all have a kind of quiet strength to them.
Yeah.
A literally quiet strength, like
now,
in her case.
Now, I have a thought, and we all know how Ring's thoughts are.
Mm.
An interesting thought is, the fact that, like, both of the female focal points of this movie, Marie and Princess, the fact that neither of them, talk.
Well, Marie does, but only to her husband, and only the once.
And only in Danish.
Yeah.
Marie doesn't talk to the American characters because of the language barrier. Princess had her tongue cut out. It kind of feels like it's a commentary on how the classic Western silenced the role of women, the role of women who actually made the West.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't say for certain, but I will say there's a valid reading of that. That's a valid reading. This film has enough depth to it, I think, to say that we can take that reading and say it was probably deliberate.
Yeah.
Because, and for me, I think the way he calls a princess, it's almost mocking.
Yeah.
Like, to everyone else around them, it's almost an affectionate thing he calls her, princess.
Yeah.
But the way he says it to her in private, he's mocking her.
Yeah.
And there's the whole thing of, you kind of have an expectation when you hear a character called princess. What you don't expect is a middle-aged woman with massive scarring on her face.
Who is hard as nails and will fuck you up.
That's not what you're expecting.
Yeah.
You're not expecting the strong silent type.
Yeah.
Which is, and it is very mocking. Now, we have quite a few interesting moments here. Her husband's been killed, and he promises her revenge.
Yeah.
And you can kind of see even she's afraid of him at that point. Like,
well,
she's,
and there's I'm sorry, there's a great symmetry in this scene because it cuts back and forth between John burying his wife and son, and Delarue's men burying his brother.
Yeah, there is. There's that scene going on. It's quite obvious that parallels being drawn, and we're being smacked in the face with it.
Yeah. Two kinds of soldiers out in the West.
Yeah. And it does set them up as opposite heads in this war. And we see, what's her written there? Penny punch. This character as well, this princess character. Remember when we watched True Grit and Matty was accused of being a penny pincher?
Yeah.
This woman's educated. She can count.
Yeah.
And she can do it fast in her head.
Yeah.
76 doesn't write down any and 76 cents.
Yeah.
To the point where even though they're employing him, even the guys who are employing Delarue to gather up all the land, etc., are kind of afraid of him.
Yeah.
And you can see them kind of holding their noses at having to deal with a man like this.
Yeah. And there's the comment of, don't do it how you did it with, the natives. You've got to do it civilized.
Yeah. When you get the impression that civilized is a word that doesn't exist in Delarue's vocabulary.
Yeah.
And the comment he passes of, if you let me do it my way, you'd have had it within 2 weeks.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna add a little bit to my interpretation of Delarue's backstory. Not only was Delarue a Confederate, he was probably one of the head of one of those Confederate guerrilla units.
Yeah. I see what you're getting at.
Yeah.
he keeps a very traditional structure within his men and the way they behave. That to me suggests that he's not a guerrilla fighter, or he's not anymore.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he's got the impression he's moved up in the world and is above that, which makes the ending all the more epic.
Yeah.
He's taken down by guerrilla warfare. Like that entire thing was just pure guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they call him Colonel. They actually call him Colonel Delarue in the office.
Ah.
So this man's got rank.
Yeah.
He's not one of the common soldiers. He's got rank.
Yeah. So he was he was probably a. Oh. So, well, here's the thing. Maybe he wasn't Confederate, because why would they? Well, oh no, we still refer to Confederate officers by their rank. So,
yeah. And even when he finally catches up with John, which is the next bit we have. They've got the brothers in prison, and he shows up, and John's taken outside and doesn't say anything. And he says to John, "They tell me you were a soldier. Who did you fight?"
No, that wasn't Delarue. That was his second in command.
His second in command, and the second in command says, "Who did you fight?" And John says, "The Germans."
Yeah.
And to me, this is a classic call out. This is why I think they're based on a Confederate unit, Delarue's people. Because he says the Germans, and the guy just looks at him and goes, yeah, you have my respect, and then smacks him one. Given the history of Germany, and the history of the Confederacy, you know where I'm going with this. I'm just trying to find the right words. There's a natural divide between John and Delarue and Delarue's men.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, again, it's very Old Testament.
Yeah.
He's literally, I mean, you probably know this. I know I was taught this in Bible class. Crucifixions very rarely, before the Romans came along, actually took place on a built-up wooden cross.
Yeah.
There are still Catholic hymns that talk of being strapped to a tree.
Yeah.
There's the vaguely Christian myth of the Holly Tree.
Yeah.
Which, do you know that one?
No.
No. So, the myth of the Holly Tree is, and the character is quite obviously meant to be Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
The man was crucified against the tree, was strapped up against the tree.
After hearing the priest's confession.
Yeah. But in the myth of the tree, feeling pity for the man who'd been crucified when he was innocent, decided and had people jeering at him and mocking him as he died, decided to soak up his blood, and they became the holly berries.
Ah.
And there's a thing about the holly leaves being sharp and stuff that represents within it. It's a very Judeo-Christian story.
Yeah.
But it's this whole thing of he's physically strapped up to this one. Now, and he's left there for what? Days.
Yeah.
It seems like days.
Well, I'm going to be I'm going to be reading into the biblical themes and say
yes, I'm going to say it's probably 3 days.
Yeah. Probably 3 days.
Yeah. And there's the brilliant moment where, again, the biblical, which I'm sure you'll know better than I will, where he's been strapped up and it cuts back to the prison cell.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's there. And the sheriff's talking to the jailer and says, if he asks for water, give it to him. And there's a
Yeah.
moment where you're not sure if he's talking about John out on the plank of wood or his brother in the jail cell.
Yeah, well, John's in a different town.
Yeah. But the way it's filmed,
Yeah.
it's almost as if he's... Now, there's an entire Christian backstory to why wine was offered at the crucifixion and why it wasn't taken.
Yeah.
And messianic prophecies and all that jazz.
Yeah. Well,
and then
it's also, I've got a christening, so mass will be longer.
Yeah. Which again is a really weird. Someone brought a baby into this world.
Yeah.
It's very weird. And then so he goes off to say mass, and he specifically says to say mass.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't realize this, or maybe I'm wrong. But if he says he's saying mass, that makes him Catholic to me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I've been referring to him as a priest.
Yeah. But he doesn't wear a priest garb. He dresses like a sheriff.
Yeah, he's got the collar.
Yeah. Vicars wear the collar as well, though, so.
Yeah. Yeah, but like in America, I may be like 100% wrong because I came from a Pentecostal background. But as far as I'm aware, in America, like the only religious authorities that wear the collar are priests, maybe Lutherans, like maybe Lutheran ministers, but
yeah, I mean, to me, because the way he's dressed, to me he's dressed more like what I see as an Italian priest. Modern Italian priests wear suits, and depending on the country, some of them wear different color shirts and things. And to me, a modern priest is black trousers, usually like a light blue shirt. For some reason, I've got that in my head. Or if they're doing a funeral, a black shirt, although it's normally a vicar if it's a black shirt. And then a black jacket over it, like a suit jacket, like a funeral jacket. And then the collar. And the collar is, if they weren't wearing the collar, you wouldn't realize they were a priest. You just think they were a businessman.
And that's basically the way that this sheriff is.
Yeah. So it's almost as if he's just another aspect of his job.
And I actually picked up on the whole Catholic, he's probably Catholic earlier because this jail scene is being filmed like a confessional.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's being filmed by a confessional. But to me, that kind of because I was raised Catholic, I register that shit and don't realize I've registered it.
Yeah.
But the moment he said I have to say mass and I'm doing a christening, those are very Catholic words.
Yeah.
And he's saying a Catholic mass, and we've got Delarue, who is Louisiana, has a French Louisiana, we presume, or at least Southern French extraction, Cajun, very Catholic.
Yeah.
And there is a kind of thing here where the Danish, not so much.
Yeah.
I've got to put it out there. The Danish... the Danish had the Enlightenment.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm trying to pronounce the guy's name. Johann Struensee. Struensee?
Well, I mean, yes, there's a lot of religious theming, but it's done very well.
Yeah, settle down when you watch this movie. You're going to church.
Yeah.
Like...
very bloody, massacre-y church.
Yeah, Old Testament church. But actually, Mads Mikkelsen plays Struensen in another film, which is just a funny little... Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Danish, probably not Catholic.
Yeah.
And again, there's that barrier going on.
Well, yeah, because the Netherlands and that area was known to be Protestant.
Yeah, it was kind of where Protestantism started, or at least got. Well, obviously it started in Germany, but then it really got off the ground in that area.
Yeah.
Largely in part because of Strunson. And I'm mangling that name, don't at me.
Yeah.
And then we have the brother starts winding the jailer up. And this is a deeply dark, humorous scene to me.
Yeah.
He just starts insulting the jailer.
Yeah.
And does it in this really polite way at first. I apologize for turning my back on you, but the view's better this way.
Yeah.
And then builds up from there to calling him ugly, to calling his voice stupid, to calling his mother a whore in the space of about 5 minutes.
Well, and and also saying that his mother brayed like a mule when he was conceived.
Yeah, like there's no it's a fucking hell of an insult. And
yay, we have context.
Yes, we have context, bro. This is why I was saying, the wording is very Catholic. The way the guy spoke was very Catholic, and that's what clued me in. And the way he winds the jailer up, and you see it looks at his face, and again, he's one of these characters who's very... There's nothing going on behind the eyes as he's saying these insults. He doesn't mean them. He's playing wind up.
Yeah.
He's doing something specifically, and he's got a goal, and it's very obvious what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
He wants this jailer to come to the rails.
Yeah.
And the way he takes him down, it's like, look, we've all seen cowboy films where they pull the sick prisoner routine and jump the guard. Yeah. There's at least 2 of them when they do that. He does it on his own.
Yeah.
And just it's so badass the way he brings him down. I was just like, yeah, okay. And plays the guys. There's one thing both these 2 brothers do. They play the smart game.
Yeah.
There's a lot of brains in their tactics and the way they behave. Yeah. There's not a lot of...
Yeah, they were they were most likely the 19th century equivalent of Spec Ops.
Yeah. Like these 2 guys, they're sharpshooters, they think they're capable of guerrilla warfare, they're capable of survival. Like these are not someone you screw with.
Yeah. These are not rank and file, let's make a square and shoot volleys of bullets at each other soldiers.
These guys are thinkers. And they're clearly capable of... And yet the thing is, you never find out if they were officers or not.
Yeah.
You never asked what the rank was. You never find out. But they are thinkers. They are they're not used to following orders. They're used to coming up with stuff and, like I said, guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
And then we have, again, the next run after he cuts his brother down.
Yeah.
And running away now from the enemy rather than towards them as his brother did at the start. And we have the pathetic fallacy of the rain. Holy shit, the rain. And his brother's got no shoes on his feet.
Yeah.
He's broken physically. Well,
yeah, at least this time around they're they have a couple horses.
Yeah. They have a couple of horses, but his brother's physically seems to be barely capable of sitting up on the horse.
No, John's slung over the horse like a dead man.
Exactly.
Once again, Jesus allegory.
Jesus allegory. And then brother sits him down behind a rock and basically throws him a gun.
Yeah.
And says, wait for me, basically. Wait, I'm coming back.
Yeah.
I'm going to lead them off. Now, you know that's a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Because there are way too many of them not to split up.
Yeah.
And it's just a last-ditch attempt by the brother here. The brother kind of knows. And they kind of both know that they're dead men walking at this point.
Yeah.
Or in one's case, dead man slung over a horse.
Yeah.
But there's a very specific shot, and the way it's shot, I had to put my glasses on and rewatch this scene.
Yep.
When I watched it without my glasses on, when it comes to morning and it focuses in on John, the way he's laid, I almost thought he was holding the rifle in his sleep.
Yeah.
He sleeps like he's holding a rifle.
Yeah.
That's a soldier. That's a learned position.
Yeah.
No one naturally sleeps like that. That's just so weird. And I had to look back because I genuinely thought he was holding it until he reached out and picked it up off the ground. And I had to put my glasses on and go back and watch that again. Like, is that a continuity error or am I being blind? But no, I was being blind. It's not a continuity error. It's another hint at their past.
Yeah.
And it kind of there's hints throughout this film that these two guys are really not whole after whatever they were doing in the war. They've been. The comment that's passed about how Delarue was screwed up from killing natives.
Yeah.
It almost applies to them as well.
Yeah. Like the sheriff priest, tells John, you're going down Delarue's path, and I don't want you to do that. What he doesn't know is he's probably already gone that path.
Yeah, John's been there, done that.
Yeah. And he's kind of come out the other side trying to find a peaceful life. Yeah.
And there's the line from the brother of you've fought in a war, and what's the one thing you learned?
Yeah.
Don't try and fight a battle you can't win.
Yeah.
And it feels like he's abandoning John there as well.
Yeah.
It's almost there's an understanding between them of, listen, I'm dead weight to you right now.
Yeah.
So your best chance is to leave me here.
Yeah.
But my best chance is for you to leave me here and lead them off as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's that brutal survivalist mentality.
Yeah.
Because most people, I think, in that situation would want to stick together come hell or high water. Like, there's a reason the standing joke in D&D is don't split the pie.
Well, it's also because if you split the party, you will kill the party.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of look at that moment where he leaves him and he's like, don't split the party, you both like, yeah. And then wakes up, picks the gun up, and
gets a drink of water. Gets a drink of water. Nasty brown water.
Yeah. And then did you see it? The horses came past.
Dragging the brother behind.
Yeah. And the brother's quite clearly already dead. And again, it's more medieval Old Testament punishment from Delarue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang, drawn, and quartered. He's been drawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's... And again, the Catholic influence.
Yeah.
Although not in a good way. And then we get Princess at the station in this, what I can only describe as a poison green dress.
Yeah.
And I think that colour is very important because that colour of green would have been slowly killing her as she wore that dress.
And not only that, but so we know Princess is, is well off, and she carries herself like she's, like
a lady, yeah.
Yeah. But she goes to third class.
Mm-hmm. She hasn't grasped how to fit in this world.
No, I
like, she's trying to hide, but she hasn't realized she's going to stick out like a sore thumb in third class.
Yeah. Well, also I think part of the reason why she picked third class is so she could have an easy exit.
And a way through the train.
Yeah.
She gets captured. And then we have John, having seen his brother dragged away, has his next stumbling through the desert montage.
Yeah.
And literally the difference between this one and the one at the start where he's chasing the stagecoach is night and day.
Yeah. Literally.
Literally. But also in the start, he's fast, he's energetic, he's really, he doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Barely stumbles. In this one, you see how, he's injured, his feet hurt, he's breaking down slowly as he's walking. And to the point where, as he approaches the farmstead, all he wants is water.
And
he's approaching because he wants to get to the well, not for any other reason.
Yeah, and we learn that, or rather, John learns, and anyone who hadn't picked up on it earlier learns that the reason the company is trying to get Delarue to drive everyone out is because there's oil in them hills.
Yeah, to the point where there are puddles of oil on the ground.
Yeah, and the woman who says you don't want to drink out of the well, it's full of oil.
Yeah, the water oil in that.
Well, yeah, the water's got sticky oil in there.
And this moment with this woman of real rare kindness we see in this film.
Yeah.
There's a rare kindness to it because she's... when she shoots at him, he doesn't flinch. He doesn't even stop moving. It's as if he doesn't even notice the gunshots. And yet, she's Mrs. Whistler.
Yeah.
Whistler was the third guy Delarue shot in the town scene.
Yeah.
Yet she never blames him for this.
Yeah.
She doesn't hold it against him that basically her husband was killed because of him.
Yeah.
She brings him clean water. She brings him, she even leaves a gun in the room. She brings him bread.
Yeah.
Again, the woman finding the man who should have died, who's then going to sit and break bread.
Oh.
Mike, the religious symbology of this film does kind of smack you around the head with a crucifix.
Yeah. Though I don't really mind it because this Jesus packs iron.
This Jesus is awesome, and we're getting there. We are getting there. And then we see again this cut back to Delarue. No respect for the body, no respect for women.
Yeah.
The very traditional, the bad guy doesn't respect the woman's right to consent. trope.
Yeah.
Well,
we also kind of got that earlier when, like he's in with he was in bed with Princess, and you see her face and she's like bleeding out the nose.
Yeah, he smacked her around.
Yeah.
He's rough. He pulls a Barbossa here.
Yeah.
And you all saw my reaction to Barbossa like last month. He pulls a Barbossa.
Yeah.
Hands her over to the men and says, basically, when you've had your way with her, cut her throat.
Yeah.
And he calls that a mercy.
Yeah. He says, you were lucky. You got lucky again, Princess. And then hands her over to the men to get used and then killed.
Used, abused, and disposed of.
Yeah.
And then we see John come to see the mayor now.
Yeah.
Man needs his boots. And this scene for me is where we know John's violent.
Yeah.
We know John is a stone cold killer.
Yeah.
The psychological warfare going on in this scene, the psychological torture in this scene.
Yeah.
The man built his own box and you made him lay in it before you killed him.
Yeah.
Like, that's cold.
Yeah.
That is just stone cold. And again, you were talking about the hints of John and his brother being more than just the rank and file. Again, you can't train. No frigging boot on the ground has got that level of cold, calculated ability to just torture someone, which is essentially what he does. And this is the good guy.
Yeah, while he's, expositing the plot to anyone who hasn't put it together yet.
Yeah. And that's what I like about this film. This film doesn't treat you like an idiot.
Yeah.
Right up until this moment, there shouldn't be anything the mayor says that's a surprise to you.
Yeah.
But if it is, we'll tell you now. But you've not been treated like an idiot up until that point.
Yeah.
It's the pop quiz. Were you paying attention? Because this is what's happening.
Because I got that this was about the town being full of oil when we got the shot of the oil the oil puddle right after he was where we had De La Rue at the bank and then it cut to the oil puddle. Yeah.
I got it from there as well.
Yeah.
And the comment from the mayor of this is barren land suddenly made sense. Oil fields aren't fertile.
Yeah.
You cannot grow crops on oil fields because the land's just it won't grow.
Yeah.
So it all feeds in and all the hints are there, but it never kind of spoon feeds them to you. Until this moment with the mayor where it's all just blown wide open. And then again, we see that twist with John, where he goes from being this vicious, violent torturer to walking into the shop, asking after the guy's grandmother, offering his sympathies. And then he is more than capable at that point of just stealing whatever he wants. But no, he specifically says, I want a knife and I'll pay for it.
Yeah. He wants a revolver, ammunition for his Winchester, and 2 bottles of kerosene.
Yeah, and a knife. And that the moment he says 2 bottles of kerosene, you know this is going to be a fucking hell of a battle.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't spill kerosene on an oil field.
Yeah.
That's how environmental atrocities happen.
Yeah.
So, and then the kid wants to come with him. And we saw this earlier in the film. The kid was almost radicalized by the loss of his grandmother.
Yeah.
This kid wants revenge, but he's just not capable yet.
Yeah, I've been practicing my shooting.
Yeah. And it's almost as if we never see John explicitly say to him, "We'll come then." The kid just appears there.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if John doesn't have the right to tell him no. And I say that because he does that more than once in this film.
Yeah.
John's decided that this kid is a man because the kid is ready to, he knows what's at stake. And he doesn't have the right to tell the kid no because his grandmother was killed at the end of the day.
Yeah. And he's almost 16.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have the big blowout finale.
Yes.
Which is majestic. Like, damn, that's majestic.
Yeah.
The way it's put together. It's almost, it's like Home Alone, the Wild West episode. You know, it's very booby traps and don't fuck with a man named John.
Yeah.
Like, he killed 3 guys with a pencil.
Yeah.
Like,
but
almost.
You know, it starts with, you know, the oil puddle burning.
Yeah. And then the barn's on fire.
Yeah. And there are horses running around everywhere.
And it's all about distraction and disorientation. And this is what I mean by this scene for me is a masterclass in guerrilla warfare.
Yeah.
Now, you will know more about that than I will. But for me, look at it, I was just like, damn, if I was going to take a town from the outside, that's how I'd do it.
Yeah, he's moving, like, he's now, and it looks like the boy's part of the plan was to set the hotel on fire. Because he was up on the roof with the other bottle of kerosene.
Yeah. And we get our hellfire moment.
Yeah.
Literally. The boy is on the roof. And he's almost, again, you don't get the impression at any point that John expected the boy to survive this battle.
Yeah.
But equally, you do get a moment of regret from him.
Yeah.
So it's almost a necessary casualty.
Yeah.
And I hate saying that when we're talking about a 15-year-old fucking child.
But and I mean, he does like hold his own a bit.
He does hold his own. He takes his shots and he pulls it through. And he, even as he's dying, gets the kerosene through the holes in the hotel ceiling and starts the fire.
Yeah.
And he must have got down off the roof somehow.
Yeah.
Because he's on the ground when we next see him.
Yeah.
Splayed out as if he's sort of rolled off the side. But even when he's shot at through the roof, he never makes a sound. We don't hear him scream. We don't hear him cry out.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's because he's killed with one shot. I think that's because he knows he has to be quiet. We see the guys catch fire, and it's very Buddhist monk moment.
Yeah.
And you see the viciousness and the brutality of Delarue's people again. It's hammered home. But also, that's the one killing that they do that's almost a mercy killing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a mercy.
Yeah. Like, the guy's on fire, his coat's covered in kerosene and he's on fire. At this point, putting a bullet in his back is a mercy.
Yeah.
Which is gross to say, but objectively, in that era, with their kind of medical abilities or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even with modern medicine, it's almost a mercy.
Yeah. Why is my grunt screen misbehaving? So he's like that, and then we get the cut to John.
Yeah.
Oh no, we get the cut to Delarue and his guy looking for John.
Yeah.
And the camera angles and the mirror in, and
Yeah.
it's just awesome. It's just a fucking epic scene.
And the other guy, you know, well, the second in command gets shot.
Yeah.
Then the other foot soldier, you know, finds the rifle under the floorboards and leans down and takes a look.
An eye for an eye.
Yeah.
And you just the glint of the blade as he falls away from it with the blood on it. Holy shit.
No, actually, I'll back it up because some great bits of cinematography, because you see the rifle peeking out from under the floorboards, and then he, you know, shoots down through the floor.
Yeah.
And, you know, but then it cuts to the rifle, and the rifle's just there.
Yeah. There's no one there.
Yeah.
And the sort of beams of light coming down are very sort of spotlighty.
Yeah, you know, from the bullet holes.
Yeah. And then there's that immediate look back at the hole, and the gun's gone.
Yeah.
So John's grabbed it after he's taken the eye.
Yeah.
And this foot soldier is still alive. And John basically hunts him down like prey.
And finishes him with the Bowie knife.
Yeah. And it's really brutal.
Yeah. Like it like in this one scene, we basically get every classic Western way of killing someone.
Yeah, it's like 1,000 Ways to Die in the West.
And no, we are not talking about that movie. We are not talking about that movie. Like, no, I don't like that movie.
Fair. This is valid.
Yeah.
And John really does. There's no hesitation. He's a hunter, and he's hunting an animal, and he's taking down his prey.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where between the shooting and that is where I put down sharpshooter versus gunslinger versus hunter.
Yeah.
Because these guys are firing left, right, and center. There's bullets all, you know, and they're not great shots. And John never misses a shot.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And his kills are very quick and almost clean.
Yeah, because John is using cover and taking his shot when he knows he has it.
Yeah. And then he gets caught out.
Yeah.
And I see what you mean by the colonel may have been one of these militias because he knows where to look for John.
Yeah.
And he basically catches him in the back.
Yeah.
Back of the shoulder. John then steps out into the open.
Yeah.
As best he can. He's not gonna... And it's almost as if he's not gonna die hiding.
Yeah.
Is what's going on there. He's stepping out into the open like, okay, yeah, you've got me. I'm a dead man.
Yeah.
And he's accepted he's a dead man. But he tried. And you almost see in his face of, okay, I'm not going to live with it, but I tried.
And then Karma gets back at Delarue in the form of Princess.
Yeah. Princess. A shot in the back. He spins. A shot in the front. And he drops.
Yeah.
She's looking down the barrel of a gun at him. John has clambered to his feet and draws his own gun and puts it to Delarue's head. And there's this moment of John and Princess, this moment of understanding where, as much as Delarue has taken from John, his wife, his child, his brother, the kill is hers.
Yeah.
Because what Delarue took from her, she's got the right. It's her kill.
Yeah.
And there's that recognition there of, hold on, I'm not the only person this man has hurt.
Yeah.
And it's really important that she's the one to take the shot. Because she's the one who's been powerless throughout.
Yeah.
And she has to regain her own power. Because if he kills Delarue there, her leaving with him becomes, she's still just a prisoner. She's still just a prisoner of the strongest man.
Yeah.
Because she kills him, she's leaving of her own accord.
Yeah. Once again, going back to the reading I had mentioned earlier, though the depictions of the West has, silenced the women.
Mm.
They are still there. They are still strong, and they take their power.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, in a lot of Westerns, the women are used as basically target practice for the bad guy. Like, the bad guy killed the woman. The bad guy shot the woman. We saw that last week in Fistful of Dollars.
Yeah.
Like, shot the woman in cold blood. That's what that was. So the fact that she takes her power back is really important to that reading you've got there.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not going to argue with you because I agree. I think it's a valid reading.
Yeah.
And then, of course, as per frigging usual, if you call for the police, you may as well order a pizza at the same time. The sheriff arrives too little, too late.
Yeah.
Pizza delivery gets to your house before the police do.
And, well, after we have a brief moment of, Princess and John having a
staring match.
Yeah, not quite a Mexican standoff because you need 3 for a Mexican standoff, but
it's a staring match. It's okay, but and it's that moment of understanding where they realize, where he's like, I don't want to kill you, but I will because you're pointing a gun at me. And she decides, yeah, this dude's acting defensively. He doesn't want to hurt me, so I'm not going to hurt him. That's what's going on there. And it's that understanding beyond a language barrier, beyond speech, where they are just two people who have finally, they've got the body between them.
And I've got a point, and I'm pointing this out because John realizes that she wasn't a member of the gang. She was a prisoner of the gang.
Yeah.
But the sheriff doesn't realize that.
Yeah. And she lowers her gun first.
Yeah.
So John is the one on the defensive in that moment. She lowers her gun and then okay, fair. The sheriff doesn't realize that she wasn't part of it all. Makes you wonder also, because the sheriff has been there so long, it makes you wonder if the sheriff knows any of her background and maybe mistrusts her for other reasons.
Yeah, don't you go with her, you're going down that wrong path.
Yeah, you're taking Delarue's path, and I don't like it.
Yeah.
But he's missed the point entirely.
So, okay. Another ring thought.
Go on.
So, while there isn't a lot of racial commentary in this movie, like practically none, this could be technically seen as a commentary of the quote, because now we know Princess is native. So don't go with the savage. She'll make you
into the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also there's another context to this. and it's going to take a bit of explaining, and it is potentially content advisory.
Okay, hold on.
She's very light-skinned. She's very light-skinned. And she passes for white for the majority of this film. At least to the people watching. Until we realise who she is. And aside from the one mark on her face, she passes for white for most people.
Yeah.
She comes across. There's an aspect of colorism that says that light-skinned, indigenous, and people of colour.
Yeah.
Somehow, the opinion of people who are colourist somehow think that the racism that, and I say we because I'm a light-skinned person of colour, experience is somehow not as bad as what darker-skinned people of colour go through. And there's an attitude, and it is more amongst Black and African Americans than among Indigenous, although it kind of follows in the same way. They took the light-skinned woman into their bed and into their home and killed the darker-skinned ones. And it's the idea of, she got treated better because she had lighter skin.
Yeah.
Although, given what she was put through, was she treated any better? Which would you rather, a quick death or slow torture for years?
And and also, sorry.
And there's light-skinned women in particular. There's a history of light-skinned women being taken into, and I'm going to say the colonizer, but this also applies to the mechanics of slavery in America, and the power dynamics there. The colonizer's bedroom.
Yeah.
And bed. And that we see in this film as well. And there's almost a commentary there on her, on saying, look, the colour of her skin is not what mattered. It's where she's from that they cared about. She will never not be native, no matter how light-skinned she is. And she's taken back that power. And she's gone through something that's almost worse than dying on a battlefield. She's been a prisoner of war. And so her story is it does feel almost like a commentary on colorism to me. Or at least that's how I read it as a light-skinned person of colour.
Yeah.
There's a recognition there that what light-skinned people of colour go through in situations like this isn't better or easier, or they're not treated better because they're light-skinned. It's the one drop rule in action.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that she gets her her revenge, but B, the recognition of what she's been through.
Yeah. And
this film, it doesn't demand that recognition from you. It just shows you in stark, very dark moments exactly what her life looks like and why it's not any better than anyone she may have lost in the war.
Yeah.
So that was my comment on the race implications there.
Well, and there's also, the comparison, like, I'm not gonna go through it in detail because we've been on for 2 hours and it's only just coming to me.
Okay.
But you can argue that while there isn't really much of a race element in Salvation, there is a lot of commentary on how, America, the welcoming melting pot, really treats minorities, be they immigrant, be they light-skinned Hispanic, be they, light-skinned people of color.
On my first page of notes, when I was watching the stagecoach scene, I wrote, "Welcome to America."
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. Welcome to America, folks.
Yeah.
And it is very much that thing of, it is calling out that myth of the welcoming melting pot.
Yeah.
This entire film is calling that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, also Ox is right, religion on a Sunday, like, these people gonna go to church when they sit and watch this film.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing either.
Yeah. Like, well, that's the thing, with the exception, of the, the sheriff, who is also the priest, who basically is presented as someone who's just trying to make the best of a fucking terrible situation.
He's a pragmatist.
Yeah. The film, while the film is very religious, while the film shows everything through a religious filter, it's not really proselytizing or,
Religion isn't the answer to this town's problems.
Yeah.
Regardless of how messianic a figure Mads Mikkelsen cuts in a cowboy hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but there is a borderline religious message to this film.
Oh yeah, John is Jesus. Well, in a reading, John is, Jesus. He's not.
There's another quote that this film embodies quite well.
Yeah.
All it takes for evil to prosper is for good men to stand by and do nothing.
That is, yeah. Also, I'm sorry, or I'm sorry if I cause any flashbacks for any apostates watching, but I'm going to paraphrase the Bible. I come not bearing peace, but no, I come not with peace, but bearing a 6-iron.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the whole thing of this movie. It has the religious overtones, but it is fundamentally a good versus evil dichotomy. But it's an exploration of the fact that there's no such thing as good and evil.
Yeah.
And it's power dynamics and power plays and people just trying to survive, and pragmatism and optimism and pessimism and everything. Just, it's a real study of human nature.
And in the end, the company wins out.
Yeah. And there's this great almost lampooning of the final job of, yes, they ride off into the sunset together. He rides off with the woman. But he rides off into the sunset where the real money is the place he's just left.
Yeah.
Like, he's not riding off to anything great because the real money's under his feet. He should have stayed.
Yeah, but
there is no place in that town for him and her, because what does the sheriff say? There's only good souls left.
Yeah.
And both he and the woman are killers.
No,
they ain't good souls.
No, yeah, the soldier said, or the sheriff says, there's only good souls left, and then she steps out of the building.
Yeah. And you do get the impression John knows that he's not a good man.
Yeah.
Because there's a comment he passes to the mayor when the mayor says, I'm just a businessman, and John says, you're not even a man.
Yeah.
And John is very good at, and all these characters are very good at saying things about one person and meaning it about another.
Yeah.
Or it being applicable to more than one person. John is very... There's never a question of what John will do.
Yeah.
In any given situation. There's never a moral question with him of what he will do. And if anything, you're shocked by how far he goes.
Yeah.
But he's also... he's an anti-hero. He is a real anti-hero here.
Yeah.
He's twisted and he's traumatized and he's vicious and he's brutal. And yet you're never not on his side. Ever.
Yeah.
He's a very good anti-hero in that sense. And that makes this a really great modern Western. But it's a really interesting take on the immigrant story. Because there's this kind of expectation, this cultural thing of immigrants should come and be grateful and be upstanding citizens and, you know, the virtuous immigrant, you know, be grateful you've been allowed to come here.
Yeah.
And John basically pisses that up against a tree.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to potentially make a very grave mistake and bring current events into this.
Be careful, but go on.
Given, like, because, you know, this is an immigrant story. And I'm sorry I was reminded of this and I have to bring it up. I've seen certain posts on mostly on Facebook, because my Facebook circles tend to lean more conservative, because that's where all the leftovers from my fundy days are. But you know, a post about the refugees from the from the recent change in power, you know, risking everything to get out, and then adding, if you don't like America, you should leave.
Yeah. Whereas this film is saying, no, he has a right to be here and he has a right to make it his own.
Yeah.
And I will say, just out of interest and as a side note, how many boxes in the list of things that make a country an empire is America going to tick before it admits it's an empire?
Yeah.
Like, it literally died in the graveyard of empires. It has international like air bases in nearly every country on the planet. It has, you know, it's got the UN there. It's basically an empire at this point. And like, God forbid you say that to an American. How dare we? No, you're Republicans. You're not empire. Yeah, right. Bang goes my green card.
Yeah.
But it's got all the trappings of it.
Yeah.
And it's there is basically the point I'm making. It's just got all the trappings of a classic empire at this point. But, and this film, this is what I mean by this film was smack in the middle of the Jeffersonian ideal is dying. The Jeffersonian ideal in this film is dead. Because it's not sustainable in this environment. But it's right before the capitalist oil boom. And it's in that moment of they need someone to lead them into the light, kind of. The messianic salvation savior. There's a reason the film's called what it's called.
Yeah.
It is a good film. There's a lot of... I don't like calling this film a Christian allegory.
Yeah.
Because emptying a gun into a guy who's already dead is not the same as walking into a temple and flipping a few tables. There's like nuance, folks.
Okay. Here's the thing. So perhaps, like, instead of saying it's a Christian allegory, it'd be more accurate to say it's a it could be read as a subversion of Republican Jesus.
See, you were saying that, and I was half expecting you to say, but this man, this is not the Jesus of the New Testament. This is the Jesus of Revelations.
Oh, yeah.
In the moment where there's no hope, there's no land, there's nothing there, people are dying off. Basically, the devil runs the town.
Yeah.
In comes the Savior. And in that sense, if you want to talk Revelations, which is definitely more a you thing than a me thing, because Christians have got a real hard on for that shit, and you know about that.
And once again, he isn't coming with peace, but bearing a Winchester. Exactly.
I know. And he's coming, on a.
Well, he's
and
not.
Death rides a pale horse.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably would have been too on the nose if you were riding a white horse.
Yeah. But even Delacruz, if you look at his coat's red.
Yeah. Delarue
becomes
also
not just Delarue, but war.
Yeah. Okay. Also, back what makes this, some things that make this a Turner thesis Western.
Go on.
So, one, there's that quintessential, urban versus open frontier shot at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Two, the villain, Delarue. Do you know what that means in French?
Am I thinking of the right rue? Because for me, a rue is a road.
Yep, of the street.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so Henry is literally a man of the street.
Mm.
You have the civilization coming in and trying to assert their dominance over the homesteaders.
The urban versus rural, the road builder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course at the end when John and Princess ride off into the sunset, it's immediately replaced by a field of oil derricks, and the town is abandoned.
Yeah. But there's oil, so there's money being made there. Where
the frontier giving way to, the second wave of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. The oil revolution, if you like.
Yeah.
Because it's quite obvious throughout this film that these characters don't have a clue what they're sitting on. They don't understand the value of the oil. So very early in the oil period. And again, they're being taken for a fast one.
Yeah.
And that's the one time John deviates from his main motivation when he asks about the Whistler's deed.
Yeah.
To get that back as well. But you almost feel like that's repayment for the kindness she showed him.
Yeah.
And the man just pays his debts, that's all.
Also, no, I'm sorry. I've got a disagreement there.
Go on.
He knows that the deed's not there. It's part of his psychological warfare and, getting the confession out.
Yeah. But I think there's a specific reason he asked for her deed. Because the mayor told him lots of people are selling up.
Yeah.
Not just her, but
but when he saw Mrs. Whistler, she was already, she was still packing up.
Yeah.
Which means she had just sold the deed.
Yeah.
So if any of the deeds were going to be there, that was going to be the most likely one.
Yeah, this is fair. But the whole film is really, we've talked about the film for way longer than the film goes on for. The film's only an hour and 28 minutes long or something daft. An hour and a half.
Yeah.
I think my DVD says it's 88 minutes.
Yeah, like an hour and 35 is what I got.
Yeah. But it's got some very deep themes. It's very, very. Someone's got to write. Someone somewhere in a theological college is writing an essay on this film.
Yeah,
I put money on it.
Yeah. It depends, because like evangelical America, evangelical, like fundagelical people probably wouldn't watch this because this is probably in that gray zone where it's probably too violent for more hardcore fundagelicals.
Have you read Revelations? Not you, but like the general, those people. Have you read Revelations? Violence is not your problem.
Yeah.
Maybe it is your problem, and that's why you need to see this film.
Yeah.
But
you need more John.
You need more John. Y'all need more John. I mean, I'm not saying no. But yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan to me is the standout surprise of this film.
Yeah.
Fantastically acted part.
Yeah.
Like I bought this film for Mads Mikkelsen. I didn't even know Jeffrey Dean Morgan was in it until he cropped up on screen. Also, like I do feel sorry for the mayor.
Yeah.
The actor who plays the mayor, because that dude's been typecast.
Yeah.
He's getting typecast as a sort of wormy older guy. He's the Sparrow from Game of Thrones. Not the Sparrow, the
Littlefinger?
No. The priest.
Oh, yeah.
The monk.
Yeah.
The zealot. It's him.
Yeah.
He's played Elizabeth Darcy's father at one point. I've seen him. He basically just plays a spineless old man, which is kind of annoying.
Yeah.
And usually ones that have got a snide backstory of some description or snide approach. So, I mean, cool if it pays the bills, dude, but I know you can do better than that.
Yeah.
I think I've seen him play like priest or priest adjacent characters. I think he was the father in North and South.
Yeah.
Who was a Christian preacher of some description.
Yeah.
English Christian preacher. And please, someone cast him in a part where he's allowed to brush his hair. Just in general, like every time I see him, his hair is just.
Yeah. So, final thoughts.
This film is you know what? It's shorter than a Catholic mass and it has better religious themes in it. And as someone who sat through many a Catholic mass, I promise you it is shorter than a Catholic mass. Because those things can go on for 3 frigging hours.
Yeah.
But it is very kind of. It takes all the preachiness out of religion and it's honest about what it is.
Yeah.
I like. It's not a traditional Western, but we don't expect it to be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make promises it can't keep.
Yeah.
Like, it lives up to what you expect. Like, what it sets itself up as in the first 10 minutes is exactly what you expect to happen.
Yeah.
With a few explosions and burning buildings along the way, because awesome.
Oh, sorry.
For me, the character himself, I think, I want that guy on my post-apocalyptic team.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I've basically got him, but with dark hair and you, so. Except for the shooting.
Yeah, except for the shooting. I can't shoot
Except
for
the
shit.
shooting, because you can't shoot for shit. We know this.
Yeah.
But aside from that, it's nice to have a protagonist you can explore, and it's really interesting that you can root for a character who is so morally questionable.
Yeah.
And yet, because his motives are so transparent, he's kind of not. His motives explain everything about him.
Yeah.
And this guy is really just. If you want a character with a one-dimensional motivation, but you want to make them actually come alive, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's my.
Also, what I really liked is brilliant cinematography, where in some ways it's presented like a very old school Western, in that the opening crawl is very old, like golden age of Hollywood, like your Ben-Hurs,
It's an epic.
Yeah. And the color, it's done in the like that old timey Technicolor.
Yeah.
Where you're like your John Wayne Technicolor type. But the cinematography is all very modern.
Yeah, it wouldn't be out of place in a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
Like some of the shots and some of the fight scenes and other stuff definitely wouldn't be out of place in like a modern superhero movie.
And also we have the use of, the very masterful use of camera angle as storytelling device and as metaphor. Like, once again, the jail confession.
Yeah. Jailhouse confession.
Yeah, the jailhouse confession. And I can't say this definitively because I haven't really seen that many modern Westerns. But in my opinion, this is the exemplification of the modern Western.
If more modern Westerns were like this, I'd watch them.
Like, if this isn't what modern Westerns are, this is what modern Westerns should aspire to be.
Yeah. Which is nice and beautifully ironic that it's not even an American film.
Yeah.
They've done exactly what the Italians did. They've come along and they've done it better than the Americans.
Yeah. Well, so I don't know who okay, what's Denmark famous for?
Bacon?
Like
butter?
Or I don't know, maybe these are going to be, maybe we'll get a wave of like lutefisk Westerns.
Maybe we should make Thomas Vinterberg make a Western.
Yeah.
Because, yeah.
Okay, so...
He's the director of this one anyway. Christian Laverne. Yeah.
So, let's get on to shilling. And before, I'm going to lead into your shilling with something. Just gonna... So currently, your the stream that you ran yesterday, 140 views.
That's more than I have subscribers.
Yeah.
Wow. Cool. Okay. Thank you. I may pick that up and do more with that.
Yeah,
not even just for the views, but because it was fun.
In one day, it's blown past the in less than a day, because we're not even at the 24-hour start time yet.
No, we're not. It was 9 o'clock last night. It started.
Yeah. So in less than a day, it blew past my top rated video, my top viewed video, which had been sitting at that place for over a year.
There we go.
Yeah. So congratulations to
good.
Noodles.
And thank you. And all the people that were on it as well. Great bunch. I said last night that fandom is a little bit of a found family thing going on there, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I don't expect anyone to sit and watch 5 hours of us gabbing about fandom unless you're actually interested in fandom. But if you want to go watch it and, give us a view, give us a like, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah. Hey, Mark Caesar, we're actually starting to close down.
Cool.
So anything else to shill?
Follow me on Twitter. It's Charmed Noodle.
Yeah.
That's my fandom Twitter, or you can follow me on my main at Danger Hissy, which, that's pretty much all I've got to shill because you've mentioned my stream last night.
Sorry, I had to announce it to you. And so as usual on Saturday, assuming nothing, happens, we'll have secular D&D. Next week, we are doing Logan to close off our Western discussion of the month, Western month. Yeah, words. But also, as a special surprise, the premiere is already set up. But tomorrow at noon my time, so in essentially 25-ish hours, I will be premiering my video on what has happened on giving like background context for what has happened in Afghanistan and why it was basically inevitable, which is also kind of partially a response to a few bad takes made by someone who's rather prominent in the atheist YouTube community. And if that piques your interest, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow and watch the premiere.
Now I'm curious.
Yeah. With that, I guess we'll move to taglines.
Cool. Well, as always from me, take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And I'd like to thank my patrons one final time, Santi the Same, Geo Sam, and Julia LaVoice. And remember, the purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.